well, come and get it, because you're looking at a woman that invented mean.
Sherri Martel was a chameleon, a performer who broke new ground for women in the wrestling business, an in-ring natural that made it all look effortless.
She was an ace. Sensational Sherri was a top-line ringer. Look at the 80s and you look at Sherri's role in some of the biggest storylines, the biggest moments, the biggest pay-per-views. My God, she was a huge star.
Inside the ring and outside the ring, and on the microphone and on camera, she was perfect. She was really the only great female manager of modern times.
You, Hulk Hogan, are the one that had a failing career. You!
Whatever the gimmick, she would do whatever it needed. Everybody in the business knew that.
But few knew of the sacrifices that Sherri's total commitment to becoming a star demanded.
Her demons took over. She said she didn't want to be a caged bird.
And the high cost of her trailblazing success.
She worked hard, man. She paid a price, too.
I knew she was in pain, but you don't work, you don't get paid. It pushed her the wrong way.
No punches pulled, no nothing!
It became more obvious that she was having issues.
If you can't get your act together, you need to step off Team Harlem Heat.
There were skeletons throughout her whole life. Some people can get over it, and some people can't.
Sensational Sherri, right out here on the outside.
Could you honestly tell me how much of that is fake? I got the job, and I go out there and I give everything that I got. I run all these miles up and down the road, and I wear my body out. That's not fake. My body gets slammed on that damn canvas, and on the outside of the ring, I get sent to the hospital. I get glass in my damn eyes. That's not fake.
Sherri was tough physically, but also she was tough somewhat mentally. She could take some of the abuse that she got from the fans or from the other wrestlers, and that's why the guys liked working with her. She was all in. I'm Jim Cornette. For almost 40 years, I've done everything in pro wrestling, especially managing, and Sherri Martel was the first person I ever managed.
That I have signed up, and I would like to introduce Miss Sherri Martel.
I've had people ask me, how did you decide to take Sherri Martel as a client? Well, I didn't.
Can I make an investment or can I make an investment?
In 1982, both of us were just getting started. Sherri was just a rookie wrestler, and we were kind of thrown together just because the promoter knew that I needed some kind of practice. So we looked at each other and said, you're greener than goose shit, and I'm even worse. How can this possibly go wrong? We bonded from that moment.
Money talks, and you know what walks.
She wasn't the over-the-top personality that you would see from Sherri Martel 5 years later or 10 years later. But at that point, nobody knew she was going to be not only one of the great female wrestlers of the next generation, but also one of the most high-profile managers in wrestling. She was just a girl who wanted to be a wrestler at that point. You didn't know how far she was going to go.
I know you all want me, but you can't have me.
Sherri was a diva before the divas were divas. Once she got in that ring, different person. The minute she got out of that ring, a sweetheart. I'm Kathy Fitzpatrick, and Sherri Martel was my best friend. We kind of had the same kind of childhood. She didn't know her dad. Her mom would take her to wrestling shows, and she liked it.
My mom would go to wrestling matches in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and there was a livestock arena. It was a great wrestling atmosphere, and the seed was planted at that point. I just always be rebel. I always wanted to do something different than everybody else.
I met Sherri Martel in 1974. I'd say at the time she was probably 17, and I was 18. I was a referee for Mid-South Wrestling, and she was a fan. I remember Sherri being in the front row watching the shows. One night in Lafayette, Louisiana, we met, we talked, and it moved forward very fast. Rillian Smith is my legal name. Jake the Snake Roberts is how most people might know me.
What's going through that eagle eye? Tremendous crowd. There it is.
Sherri and I had spent some raw time together. We were on again, off again for about 4 or 5 years. Just her walking into a room, she was a star. I mean, that's just how captivating she was. She was beautiful, but she wasn't your typical, oh, dainty, pretty girl. She was a kick-ass ass-in-your-face girl. Was I in love with her? I was in love with something. There was that connection. Both of us wanting something that seemed so far out of reality. It seemed like we'd never get to the big show or to the WWE or even Mid-South.
He's out for blood. He's not out to wrestle.
Sherri Martel wanted to be a wrestling star from the get-go.
In those days, there were no training programs that were advertised. You had to just hang around until somebody was willing to take a chance on you if you wanted to be involved in wrestling. Grizzly Smith at the time was a road agent and a matchmaker for Mid-South Wrestling. And if he would see prospective talent, he would take an interest in it.
I had went to Grizzly Smith when I was 16 years old. It was Jake Roberts' father, and I told him I wanted to learn how to wrestle. He told me to come back when I was 21.
Dreaming of being a wrestling star, but with no avenue to begin her training, by 1976, Sherri is living and working in New Orleans.
She was gorgeous, had a good sense of humor, and we got along. I'm Leroy Gonzalez, and I'm the ex-husband of Sherri Martel. June of 1976. I was in training in a restaurant, and she was sitting in a booth and complained about a roach in the booth. I just looked up at her and said, I wish I'd have been that roach. So she says later on, she says, why don't you come and meet me and have a drink? She was working across the street. I didn't know where I was going really, and so when I walked in, I realized it was a club, and she was on stage. After her dance was over, she came and sat down. We got to talking, and she just swept me off my feet. She was wanting to get out of that business, and I bought a trailer, and she moved in with me. One day I come in from work, got on her knee, and asked her to marry me. But she'd go out with her girlfriends and party, yes. But any drug, marijuana, uppers, mollies, downers, quaaludes, cocaine. We got into some pretty heated discussions about it, and it just never stopped. At that time, she wanted to have a family. And we had Jarrett in July of 1978. We wanted a child, now we have one. Time to put your big girl pants on and take care of the child. Couldn't take it. When she told me she was going to pursue a career in wrestling, I laughed at her. I had no idea. She left when the baby was like 3 months old.
And I know it hurt, it bothered her. But sometimes you have to do what you have to do.
Sherri moves to Memphis, where she again finds work as an exotic dancer while continuing her search for a way to break into the wrestling business.
In those days, there was always some independent or what we call outlaw wrestlers around a major wrestling city.
And I went to a school that Butch Moore had in Memphis. I told him I wanted to learn how to wrestle. He got up and he slapped the living hell out of me. And at that point, I looked at him and I said, "Is that all you've got?"
There you go, outlaw wrestler. Here, let me slap you and see if you're tough enough. What the is that? I would have been interested to see if she slapped him back if he could handle it.
I mean, I didn't care how male-dominated it was. I was going to succeed in this. I went and I told Grizz, I've got a year of training under my belt. I threw my driver's license out at him. I said, I'm 21 now. I'm ready. I had a son. I'm divorced. I said, this is what I want to do. And he says, why? I said, because I think that I can be the best person that I possibly can be. This is the career that I want. And he said, okay.
Tell me about her skills in the ring.
Great. Ask my sister. Rockin' Robin.
The first time I met Sherri was when she would come in town, and often she would stay actually at my father's house. I'm Rockin' Robin, and I defeated Sherri Martel for the WWF Women's World title.
History made here, new ladies champion, Rockin' Robin.
Like a lot of the other girls, if they were in town, I would go and hang out with them. I guess try to make them more comfortable. My father, Grizz, he had a liking, very much for younger girls.
I mean, he was a no-good son of a bitch, man. Actually, she was a little old for his wheelhouse.
I would go to the matches and watch her wrestle. Sherri could be strictly business, even at that young of an age. She had those rough edges, but that's what made her Sherri.
After Grizzly saw, well, we've given her the basics, she needs to go to work with Moolah to continue her career.
The fabulous Moolah!
The fabulous Moolah was not only the world women's champion wrestler for 30-something years, but also she booked all the women wrestlers to the various territories around the United States. So if you were an aspiring female wrestler, you almost had to not only be trained by Moolah, but then stick with Moolah and work as part of her troupe. And one of the most adhered to rules was that you have to give Moolah her booking kickback, or elsewise you're in serious trouble. It was almost like a military school type of operation for lady wrestlers.
We did what Moolah told you. I figured that if I was going to make it in this business and I got through her camp, and there was nothing that was going to stop me.
Moolah had a lot of rules. There were curfews. The girls had to be in at certain times. And Moolah said at the time, she was just into that nightclubbing. And darling, that was just too much for me. And Moolah asked her to depart the compound. Once Sherri got away from Moolah, she was able to create more of her own personality and get over on her own merits rather than somebody else telling the promoter how to use her.
In the months after Sherri leaves her husband and infant son behind to pursue wrestling, Leroy struggles to put their family back together.
I was trying to get her to come back home. I hired a private investigator to follow her, and I found out where she was at and some of the things that she was up to. I was making a night deposit at the bank, and 3 big guys walked up to me and point blank told me, hey, leave Sherri alone. She belongs to us. I have no idea if they were just friends of Sherri, if it had anything to do with the Wrestling Association. When they said she belongs to us, well, she belongs to wrestling. I left her alone after that.
After stints in Japan and Mid-South Wrestling, by the mid-1980s, Sherri Martel is working as a wrestler and manager in the AWA, a regional promotion based in Minneapolis.
Vern Gagne in the AWA, that's one guy that had never had a relationship with the fabulous Moolah. That was good for Sherri because he could book any girl or anybody else he wanted to book.
Now we know who's a better woman. I told you she was crazy.
There were never a lot of lady wrestlers in the AWA, but the ones that they picked and that they did use were very accomplished. And Sherri was physical and she could dish it out.
Beating her over the head with that belt.
Sherri knew the business, and her psychology was on point. Her timing was incredible. Hey guys, WWE Hall of Famer, known as Alundra Blaze and Medusa.
From Robbinsdale, Minnesota, Medusa Michelli.
I looked up to her a lot, and kind of trying to emulate what she did and how strong she was, even though she was caving inside in so many ways. I went over to her house, and I remember her saying that her son was away. Having a child in this business was frowned upon for women. So her son, I felt, was purposely not to the forefront, for she was really trying to do something with her career.
I'm Jarrett and Jarrett. My mother was a legend showing myself. I'm not in the best of health now. It's not easy. I want the pay.
I think he has cancer, even though he's never said it straight out to me. From what I understand, he lost part of his tongue due to cancer.
This is what before she left. Don't judge her for what she did. I was always taken care of, and she made sure of it. In a way, she made the best decision for me.
Sherri had him, but Pat raised him. Jarrett was 3 years old when we told him who his mother is.
My oldest memory was a magazine, and it was published in Japan.
We started making arrangements for Jarrett to fly out and meet her. Supposed to be for a week and ended up maybe 2 days. She'd send him back.
Did that make you angry as a kid that you couldn't see your mom more often?
I'm so angry.
It was very difficult for women to even have a relationship, let alone have a child. And I feel that it really took a toll on women mentally, because we were trying to push the envelope harder than we needed to prove a point, to take us seriously. Basically, as the whole thing in the business, you just, do what you're told and do your job. And hopefully maybe you got escalated.
And Sherri Martel, she shows me a lot of confidence. I like that.
Two of the biggest stars that had worked in the AWA that had since gone to the WWF working for Vince McMahon were Jesse Ventura and Curt Hennig.
That's right, McMahon. For once in your life, you're right, and I just might let you keep your job.
Their word carried a lot of weight with Vince, and they both put good words in for Sherri.
As soon as Sherri arrives in the WWF, she is pitted against her former mentor.
Fabulous Moolah, reigning women's champion for quite some time, I might add.
By 1987, Moolah has had the women's world title for most of 30 years, and she's in her mid-50s. And at that point, a change had to be made, and Vince McMahon was the one to be able to pay Moolah what she required to do that, and they put the belt on Sherri Martel.
Moolah well in control of this one, slams her back in. Oh, look at that, Sherri hooked her, takes her over. It's unreal. History's been made here.
As a wrestler, that was the peak of Sherri's career.
I alone, me, myself, and I beat the fabulous Moolah. I pinned her 1, 2, 3, right?
That says a lot.
Okay, I'm not finished yet. Rockin' Robin, you can rock and rock and rock around the block all night long, but there will never come a day in your life to where you can defeat me.
They put me on a dark match with Sherri, and then the next thing I know, I'm working in the WWF.
These two are working each other over.
We were wrestling, we were working every night, and we were on the road with Hulk Hogan and Jake, Randy Savage, and we were at a different arena every single night, on a plane every single day.
Those days, we were doing 7 days a week. Every week. There were no days off. Kidding me? The women were out there working their tails off. But Sherri probably worked harder than she needed to. She wanted to be a part of the show. A big part.
Pat and I, which was my ex-wife, would turn it on and watch wrestling. Jarrett was jumping up and down. His mom was on TV. I never even liked it. Took her away. But then again, that was her choice.
My mind was so focused on wrestling, everything else took second. Everything. And that was including my ex, my family, everyone.
Sherri was emotionally wrecked. There was a lot of pain and anger there, probably from her leaving people behind. But she was close-lipped about all that. And she knew how to keep her nose to the ground and grind.
In those days, the female wrestlers were an attraction. They were a special thing to put on the card. So if any of the female wrestlers wanted to be taken seriously, they had to be accepted in the locker room, and then the guys would have greater appreciation for their work in the ring. And all the guys like Sherri, she was one of the boys, and that was the ultimate compliment in those days that any of the male wrestlers could give one of the girls is, you're just like us. You're tough, you're a partier, you're stiff in the ring, we accept you.
I think she probably could have drank or, snorted them under the table. Absolutely. Whatever Sherri did, she did to the max.
Sherri loved her pot. And so when you get the mix of cocaine and marijuana and then drinking, I don't know how they kept going for 2 or 3 nights. There were nights I wrestled Sherri and she was going on 48 hours. She was never late for a match, though. She always showed up.
I think it was like an outdoor show. I keep looking at her, and you know how when somebody just kind of looks right past you? And I'm like, I don't know if she even sees me. I was down on all fours on the mat, and she threw a kick, and it caught me right on the throat. It was full force. I couldn't breathe. I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is it. I'm gonna die at a state fair in the middle of a wrestling ring.
Intoxicated but still performing in the ring, Sherri Martel has kicked Rockin' Robin in the throat, leaving her struggling for breath.
Finally, I was able to get that big breath. Then we got back to the dressing room, and she just grabbed me and gave me the biggest hug, and she knew that it was bad. She did like pot. That was no big deal. But if there was anything else that really impaired you to do your job in the ring, that's when it becomes a problem.
They don't call me the Sensational Sherri for nothing. And in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how sensational I am.
By 1990, Sherri Martel is a dominant force in the WWF as one of its premier female wrestlers. But that is about to change.
Vince McMahon was never fully sold on the idea of, back in those days, of an entire women's division. I think he just decided to wrap it up. He still had Sherri Martel there, and Sherri was able to exhibit the fact that she could do a promo and she was this wild, over-the-top personality. Then Vince figured, heck with women's wrestling, I'm going to put her in the corner of one of my main event male stars and make her more money than she's ever made. Because that's the thing, you could be the world women's champion wrestler and make or you could be the manager for a main event male star in the WWF and make a fortune.
I think Vince McMahon probably saw the same thing everybody else saw, which is a very gifted, athletic, physical woman that was very attractive. The camera loved her, and there's not a microphone she couldn't own. My name is Eric Bischoff, former president of World Championship Wrestling. Grew up as a young man, a fan of Sherri Martel, and had the opportunity to work with her in the 90s.
He likes what he sees.
Back when Sherri was at her peak and managing, the producer would say to you, okay, you're going to be doing this and this, you're going to be doing it on this night, you're going to be in the ring with these two. That's it. Boom. Ready, set, go.
I look in there, what do I see? I see Hulk Hogan laying flat on his back.
She would figure out a way to tweak her personality and her appearance and the way she dressed, the way she acted, to kind of more closely fit the guy she was with while still being, at the root of it, herself.
And indeed, we have a new Macho King, Randy Savage, accompanied, of course, by Queen Sherri.
If you go back and you look at the wrestling world and what the product was during the peak of Sherri's career, I think she had a ridiculously powerful impact on it.
I had no idea that she was really gonna do it that well.
Oh, yeah.
As time went on, she just became very famous.
Please welcome Sensational Sherri.
Jarrett would fly out and go and meet her and a bunch of the wrestlers.
When I was going to live with my mom, that's where I grew up. No, my mom wasn't the moo every day. No, my mom's a legend. And this is how legends were made.
Sherri was completely different than what any other female had been presented as in the WWF up to that point in time.
Introducing first the manager, Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth was brought in with Randy Savage because she was his real-life wife, and you had Sable and you had Sunny, but they weren't trained wrestlers. Sherri was. Sherri wasn't afraid to get in there and mix it up and do what needed to be done in the finish to get the people on the edge of their seat. She didn't care if she was wearing a $5,000 ball gown. She's going to be down on the floor, choking the guy that her wrestler is opposing.
Ultimate Warrior with Sensational Queen Sherri. Down they go.
She was always taking bumps, crazy bumps, big bumps, tall bumps, concrete bumps, right? In a woman's frame, there's a little less sometimes, right? And she was banged up.
I'm sure she had injuries. How bad is the question.
Do you know how she dealt with her pain?
I'm sure she took meds.
If I would have ever opened my mouth and what I saw, I wouldn't have been able to go back and see her. I don't ever miss her if I know if she and my mom sober.
There's so much that we put our bodies through on a daily basis, things that God did not intend us to do. And in turn, people find ways to compensate or to get through. I found ways to get through.
Somas are a muscle relaxer that many of the wrestlers began to rely on, and it began to become a problem in wrestling in the late 80s and into the 90s like a number of other substances did.
It was like candy. It was ready available, and they took the Somas, they took the Vicodins, they took whatever the hell else they took. Sometimes you had doctors that wrote these prescriptions out. It was crazy. I saw it firsthand.
You can believe in the WWF and their new testing policies and procedures.
When the WWE first started drug testing, it was because of the steroid scandal that Vince McMahon got himself into, along with Hulk Hogan and a few of the guys that were really over the top on the steroids. But they were testing for all kinds of street drugs and illegal drugs as well. And Sherri failed a number of times for marijuana.
I got called up to the office, and it was J.J. Dillon, Bruce Pritchard, and Vince McMahon sitting there. And I said, Sherri, your drug test has come back positive again. We have to let you go. What would be the point of getting up yelling and screaming? I knew I screwed up.
In any wrestling promotion since the dawn of time, if you showed up high and screwed something up, you got fired. Nobody got sent to rehab. Everybody got sent packing.
Fired from the WWF in 1993, Sherri Martel needs to figure out her next move to stay working in the industry that she loves.
Nobody could hurt me any more than I've hurt myself. When I got released, I went back home and I started making phone calls.
Of all the things I've ever been so excited about in my life is coming to the Parade of Champions.
The same year that she had been let go from the WWF, I brought her down to Knoxville for Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Sherri Martel giving it to Tammy Finch.
She was the same old Sherri and came in and did a wonderful job for us. But there was one night after one of the shows, I could tell she was slowing down a little bit. And I said, Sherri? Oh, I'm okay. I said, having a cruise on Lake Havasoma. I see. If you're heavily somaed, not only are you zombified mentally, but your whole body is out of control.
She always had bad back pain, and she sometimes took a little too much. And it was for the pain. It wasn't for any other reason, it was for the pain. It wasn't just to pop a pill.
She was medicating on her own, which had gotten out of hand. That never works out well in the end, does it?
I couldn't see how destructive I was. I thought the drugs made me perform better, and I wasn't able to see what other people saw.
Despite her ongoing issues with pain medication, Sherri returns to the national spotlight with WWF rival World Championship Wrestling.
I am here for a reason, and that is to find a man that can fulfill all of my needs.
I didn't ask Sherri why she was let go from WWE, if she quit or was fired. I didn't know, I didn't ask, and I didn't care. I hired her back in '93 because she was a great talent.
To be led to the ring by Sister Sherri. Wow! From Harlem, New York.
Sherri and Harlem Heat, Booker and Stevie Ray, they looked great together, and they had not had a major spot anywhere before in a big-time promotion or on a major television show, so she kind of gave them credibility that they wouldn't have had because everybody knew who Sherri was.
Sherri's passion and dedication to her career comes at the cost of never having enough time for her son, Jarrett.
There's many times she held me, begging for my forgiveness, and I would sit there and tell her, "You don't have to beg."
She seemed a little more lost and uncertain.
My body had just gotten to the point, and my brain had gotten to the point to where I just could not do it. I could not perform up to their expectations.
She was let go because she was no longer good on camera. She would show up under the influence of something. I'm guessing it was prescription drugs. Didn't matter to me. She was under something and it was affecting her ability to perform.
You can't fire me because I quit right now.
Oh, wait a minute.
I don't know what took place between Sherri and Eric. Maybe she was taking too many somas. Maybe she wasn't herself. Maybe she wasn't performing in the ring like she was supposed to. However, if that was true, and he acted and said, "I'm just going to get rid of her," then that should have been done twofold on a handful of men. But it wasn't.
After WCW, there was no place to go. At that point in time, Sherri was in her 40s, and younger girls had come along, so I think it probably was the worst thing that happened at that point in time that she lost that spot.
I'd heard it over the grapevine that she was deep into the oxys. They were controlling her life. You medicate. F*** it, I lost my job, I'm just gonna get up. It's not like there's 20 wrestling companies that you can go to. Sherri spent probably 5 years up there. I mean, that's a great accomplishment, but it's never enough. It's never enough.
As her wrestling career nears its end, Sherri Martel marries her new boyfriend, Robert Schrull.
She had gotten married in 1997, which was during her WCW run. And sometimes when a civilian marries a celebrity, that civilian thinks that celebrity is always going to be a celebrity. And unfortunately, after the WCW run, Sherri was off television, out of the business, and just a normal person. Sherri didn't do normal well.
She was still in a lot of pain. Sadly, I think if she had another outlet and it got whatever she needed, from what I understand, it was a surgery, but she couldn't afford it, I don't think she would ever gotten hooked on pills.
At some point, when you get addicted to prescription pills or anything else, you're taking it because you have to, whether you're injured or not, because you're addicted. But I don't think that her husband was any benefit to her in that particular situation.
Robert was always trying to put a wedge in between my mother and the family, taking her away from us. The last time I saw my mother was the night she was inducted to the Hall of Fame.
In 2006, after several years away from the wrestling business, Sherri becomes the second woman to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame.
You know, the amazing thing about this business is I had the ability to walk beside some of the most wonderful people in the world.
This was her time to shine, and she spoke from the heart.
And then I met a man named Eric Bischoff. And we all know where he's at now, right? Woo! Out of here! Whoa! Oh no! He's here! Damn, I thought you were gone.
Everything my mom ever worked for, I was just happy she was alive to be there. That was the top of her career.
My son Jarrett, my husband Robert, my best friend Kathy Fitzpatrick. I love you, baby.
She didn't look at it as a great occasion because that meant, you know, it's all over. That's one of the hardest things in the world for a lot of people is to find your place in life when all you've ever known is wrestling and all that goes with it. That's where a big part of the struggle can be.
Although it seems her career might be over, Sherri spends the next year optimistic for her future in the business.
I was on the phone with her. She was in the best mood ever. She was sitting on the front porch with her mom, drinking sweet tea, playing with the puppy they just got, and said to me, I have some news to tell you, but I don't want to jinx it. From what I had heard, they were going to bring Sherri back, get her operation, get her backs fixed, and they were going to have her train the women.
I know she wanted to go back to the WWE. Whether they were receptive or not to giving it to her, I don't know, and I guess we won't ever find out at this point.
9:30, June 15th. I heard that my mother passed away.
I believed her sister or somebody called me. And that's when I got in my vehicle and drove to Alabama so I could be there.
And how did you feel?
Empty. Empty.
Didn't deserve to die the way she did.
Sherri's sudden death at age 49 causes local Alabama police to open an investigation.
She forgot in the rocking chair on the porch with my grandmother.
It just seemed so ironic that she was so happy the night before. And 10 o'clock the next morning, I get this phone call.
Following a brief investigation, Sherri Martell's death is ruled an accidental overdose.
I knew she could go to extremes, but I guess I did not know that it was just an ongoing, life-threatening problem. It floored me.
Regrettably, the addiction struggles that plagued Sherri's life are also on display at the funeral.
I know we had a few people there that were probably coked out of their mind and drugged out and whatnot. I think Jake was so out of his freaking mind. Oh my God. And I think he was leaning over the casket. He was just out of it.
I remember Stevie Ray being there and Booker T. But other than that, I can't remember anything about it. I mean, I was at my very lowest right then. They asked me to have a few words, and I did. And I remember looking at her saying, "How dare you leave me behind?" Right, I was angry. Because I thought we were friends for forever. Not counting dying. We were just alike. We both came up hard. And we both had to fight and scratch and claw for everything. She was one of my loves, man. You know, she was somebody that I identified with and somebody that I cherished. I honored our friendship. I honored her. Always will.
Sherri was my best friend. I don't think anybody could ever take that friendship away from us. Even if she's gone, I know she's with me.
I don't think you can think about women in wrestling and not put Sherri Martel at the very top of your list.
A lot of the fans loved and respected her. Maybe some of them didn't respect her enough because they didn't know the work that it took and the perseverance and the dedication it took for her to get there. This is a picture that Sherri gave to me at a fan fest like 20 years ago or whatever. She signed to me. It says, "To Jimmy Cornette, remember always, I was your first. Loving you forever, Sherri Martel." And boy, she looked good. But everybody in the business had a high opinion of Sherri and her talent.
These are letters that my mother wrote to me over the years.
Never held anything against her except for the fact that she left. Jarrett, to me, he's special. And I do what I can to keep him going.
My dad is a good provider. My mom and my stepmom loved each other. She couldn't have picked a better person to raise me. Can I have her come up to that news?
That's my odds. He's my everything.
This is why I'm here today. Sherri was my mother, but this was her tattooed brother.
She used to tell me all the time, I would never find someone as good as you to take care of my son. She was awesome. She really was. She chose her career, you know?
My mom, that's all she knew, and I don't hate her for it at all.
I sacrificed so much of my life, my family time, and I'd like to know that the mistakes that I made, people won't remember me so much for those, but for the good that I tried to do. I hope people will look back and maybe learn something from my mistakes. Yeah. Yeah.
That fateful summer night, the tension in the air was palpable. Jimmy Corderas and Jerry Briscoe watched anxiously from the backstage monitors as the man behind the leather mask did the unthinkable. Instead of waiting inside the structure, Mankind climbed directly to the roof of the 15-foot steel cage before the opening bell even rang. What followed is etched into the collective memory of sports entertainment history. As both giants stood atop the mesh, secured only by fragile zip ties, the inevitable friction of 600 pounds of human weight caused the structure to groan and sag. Then came the moment that stopped the world, with Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler calling the action alongside the Spanish announce team below. The Undertaker hurled Mankind off the apex of the cell. The descent felt simultaneously agonizingly slow and instantaneous. The horrific crash through the Spanish announce table sounded like a catastrophic highway accident. Silence fell over the arena, quickly replaced by gasps of sheer horror. Backstage personnel exploded in panic, fearing the worst. Family members watching at home experienced absolute terror, with loved ones desperately trying to soothe frightened children by whispering that it was all an act, while quietly panicking inside, yet driven by an unyielding reservoir of adrenaline and sheer willpower. The story did not end there. Medical personnel, including Dr. Francois Petit, rushed to the scene as a dislocated shoulder, and severe trauma threatened to halt the spectacle. A gurney was brought out, but the resilient competitor refused to accept the stretcher's embrace. With the crowd watching in stunned disbelief, Mankind rose from the wreckage, looked toward the heavens, and began the impossible climb back up the cage. What transpired next pushed human endurance past its absolute breaking point. During a subsequent sequence intended to feature a controlled descent through the mesh, a devastating chokeslam sent Mankind crashing violently through the steel roof of the cell. As he plummeted toward the hard canvas below, a heavy steel folding chair dropped right behind him, striking him directly in the face with sickening force. The impact knocked him legitimately unconscious for 42 seconds. The ring mat offered zero forgiveness, acting more like solid concrete. Referees, medical staff, and Terry Funk swarmed the ring, frantically checking for signs of life. Terry Funk, displaying ultimate veteran instinct, stepped directly into the path of The Undertaker to demand a strike, desperately attempting to divert attention away from the motionless body of his friend so medical professionals could work. When consciousness finally clawed his way back, the sheer grit of the man took over. With a massive wound beneath his lip and a dislodged tooth driven upward through his nasal passage, Mankind flashed a bloody, haunting smile. He rolled deliberately into a bed of steel thumbtacks scattered across the canvas, his body absorbing every sharp point as the adrenaline masked the agonizing reality of his injuries. After 17 minutes of sheer brutality, the match reached its conclusion with The Undertaker securing the victory. As the stretcher was waved off, the arena erupted into absolute frenzy. The audience recognized authenticity when they saw it, cementing a bond of fierce loyalty between the performer and the fans who witnessed the sacrifice. Behind the curtain, the immediate aftermath was a mixture of profound relief and stern warnings. Vince McMahon expressed gratitude while urging him never to attempt such madness again. Medical examinations later revealed 15 stitches beneath the lip, missing teeth, a bruised kidney lasting 6 weeks, a dislocated jaw, and severe concussions that went largely unaddressed by the medical standards of that era. Yet, despite the physical toll, that single match catalyzed a massive career renaissance, propelling a performer once deemed unmarketable all the way to the World Wrestling Federation Championship just months later. Unfortunately, the bar of expectation continued to rise, and the relentless punishment did not stop there. Just 7 months later, Mick Foley faced The Rock in the infamous I Quit match, a brutal showdown marked by 11 unprotected steel chair shots to the head. Observers backstage watched in horror as the boundaries of human safety were repeatedly shattered. The long-term consequences of repetitive brain trauma and concussions, likened by medical professionals to experiencing repeated automobile accidents at high speeds, would eventually demand a heavy price. Years later, the legacy of these sacrifices remains complex. While the legendary Hell in a Cell match became a defining cornerstone of his storied career, it also cast a long shadow, initially bringing moments of darkness and resentment when it threatened to overshadow all other accomplishments. Yet, conversations with peers like The Undertaker eventually brought perspective. What they created that night would outlive them both, cementing a permanent place in the history of sports entertainment. As Mick Foley continues to share his stories through spoken word performances and mental gymnastics on stage, the echoes of the past remain ever present. The journey was filled with severe bumps in the road, physical pain, and profound risks taken for the roar of the crowd. But looking back at the canvas offered to him by the world of professional wrestling, the sentiment remains that despite the scars, it was a remarkably powerful and magical way to leave an indelible mark on history. On June 28, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view, one match would earn its place as one of the most shocking in the history of professional wrestling. The Undertaker versus Mankind in Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. Industry insiders knew it was going to be intense, but nobody anticipated that level of sheer lunacy. We had two elite talents in that structure who loved to push the envelope until it fell entirely. Over the edge. Professional wrestling is a stage spectacle, but you simply cannot fake gravity. Many veterans and analysts have been frightened by numerous things throughout the decades of sports entertainment, but nothing frightened them quite like what transpired that night, at least until later on in the grueling encounter. What left fans around the globe utterly stunned was the unrelenting, brutal punishment Mick Foley endured. Until you witnessed it with your own eyes, human reason told you that a person could not physically subject themselves to this level of trauma and live to tell the tale. Yet, this match was entirely real. The pain was real. The drama was real. Behind the scenes, producers and executives were cursing, screaming, and openly questioning the sanity of what was unfolding. Why would anyone push their body to such extremes? Throughout the annals of professional wrestling, Hell in a Cell's legacy persists as both an epic success story and a profound cautionary tale. Looking back, observers cannot help but feel that the industry dodged multiple catastrophic bullets that day. It remains staggering to think that officials allowed a competitor to go unconscious and then simply instructed him to continue the match. The collateral damage that ensued from those decisions is an entirely different story. When does it stop? When is enough truly enough? You pay a heavy price every single day for the choices you make during your brief 15 minutes in. The Spotlight, it was a dangerously deranged masterpiece. But all of us need to step back and ask ourselves a fundamental question. Was it truly worth it? Everyone who enters the demanding world of professional wrestling is often searching for something they find missing in their own personal lives. For Mick Foley, childhood teasing created an overwhelming psychological need to be liked, to find acceptance, and to eventually capture that coveted World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. During his sophomore year in college, a young Foley took a swig of red food coloring and performed a high-flying leap off a bed onto a stuffed object on a concrete floor. Upon impact, he spat out the artificial blood mixture. Everyone in the college dorm was watching. When he heard a peer yell out that it was the most disgusting thing she had ever witnessed, he felt an immediate rush of power. He realized that if he could not make people love him, perhaps he could shock and disgust them to secure a reaction. His name is Mick Foley, widely celebrated as a hardcore legend, and he is a survivor of Hell in a Cell. For many fans, Hell in a Cell serves as the ultimate gateway into the product. Countless enthusiasts note that it was the very first match they ever witnessed, sparking a lifelong passion for the sport. Yet, seasoned observers always follow up with a crucial question. Did you genuinely expect every match to be like that? Because they certainly are not. A standard Mick Foley match was already notoriously hardcore and brutal, typically featuring excessive bloodshed, thumbtacks, barbed wire, and blazing fire. In international promotions, like in Japan, he pushed boundaries even further by engaging in explosive death matches, getting speared through tables engulfed in flames, and absorbing brutal impacts directly onto unyielding concrete floors. He pushed his physical vessel to unimaginable limits. His family watched the toll it took. Realism was a core philosophy of his career. He famously stated that he did not feel he had a good match unless he struggled just to walk back to his hotel room afterward. He did not necessarily enjoy the agonizing pain itself. Rather, he relished the fact that he could absorb that punishment and merchandise the reaction in a way that entertained the masses. His wife, Colette Foley, who has known him for over 35 years, recalls meeting a gentle, kind-hearted man whose corny jokes and terrible humor won her over. They formed a solid partnership. She understood his fierce commitment. When the adrenaline was pumping, his ultimate drive was to leave the audience talking about how extraordinary the show was, regardless of the personal risk involved. Over the years, he developed a volatile alter ego known as Cactus Jack. According to industry veterans like Jim Cornette, who served as a producer and agent for the World Wrestling Federation at the time, Foley possessed an unmatched grasp of match psychology. He understood precisely how to manipulate crowd sentiment, playing the character who was completely out of control and actively defying the script. He took fans on a wild psychological ride, eliciting the exact responses he desired, before reaching the pinnacle of sports entertainment. Foley spent countless hours studying Japanese wrestling tapes, sometimes watching up to 12 hours a day. He admired the raw realism and the concept of man versus environment. Japan eventually became a proving ground where he crossed paths with Terry Funk, an all-time great renowned for his ability to make audiences suspend disbelief instantly. Funk became a mentor as they toured through violent, fiery death matches together. Foley was drawn to the extreme style because it allowed him to stand out and carve out a unique identity. Initially, his style did not align with the squeaky clean Global Wrestling Federation era of the time. Al Snow, a former superstar and Foley's close travel companion, notes that Vince McMahon initially did not want McFoley on the roster. McMahon did not find him conventionally marketable or attractive. However, Jim Ross, then Vice President of Talent Relations, advocated strongly for Foley, recognizing that the roster needed unpredictable, dangerous opponents to face rising marquee stars like The Undertaker. Vince McMahon eventually relented, albeit with skepticism, famously deciding to mask the competitor under a bizarre persona. Thus, Mankind was born. Despite the unconventional and grotesque initial concept, Foley's total commitment breathed life into the character, forging an undeniable connection with the audience. By mid-1998, The Undertaker and Mankind had laid a solid foundational rivalry across multiple television matches and pay-per-views. However, both competitors knew their shared narrative had plateaued. They needed to do something monumental to elevate their legacies. For the upcoming King of the Ring event, World Wrestling Federation producers planned to revisit their feud using a newly established match stipulation, Hell in a Cell. While previous cage matches required escaping over the top or through the door, the Cell introduced a completely enclosed roof. 2 men enter and only one walks out. While the inaugural Cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels set a towering technical benchmark, Foley sought to shatter expectations completely. During a casual conversation with Terry Funk, the veteran jokingly suggested starting the match on top of the Cell and getting thrown off. While spoken in jest, Foley looked at him and realized he was entirely serious. Foley pitched the death-defying concept to The Undertaker and Vince McMahon. While management was initially hesitant, Foley's unwavering determination won them over. He did not view this high-risk maneuver as a miraculous second act in his career. Rather, he saw it as a desperate attempt to keep his professional head above water. Believing his active career was nearing its end, on June 28, 1998, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a packed house of 16,000 fans eagerly awaited the showdown. Referee and ring crew member Jimmy Corderas watched from the backstage monitor setup, serving effectively as the pilot of the production control room. As the bell rang, instead of starting inside the structure as tradition dictated, Mankind shocked the entire arena by scaling the exterior mesh wall of the Cell. As he reached the top, the reality of the terrifying height set in for a performer who privately struggled with a fear of heights. Inside the 20-foot-high enclosure, the steel mesh was held together by simple plastic zip ties. As The Undertaker and Mankind stepped onto the roof, the heavy wire mesh instantly sagged by nearly a foot under their combined weight, snapping zip ties with audible cracks. Moments later, the inevitable collision occurred, in front of a horrified audience. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler watched as a 300-pound human being was hurled from 20 feet above through the air, crashing directly down onto the Spanish announce desk below. The sound of the impact echoed through the arena with terrifying clarity. Backstage personnel exploded in immediate concern, watching the monitor with the collective horror of bystanders witnessing a catastrophic automobile accident. For a tense duration, observers feared the worst. Miraculously, fueled by pure adrenaline and calculated mid-air body control, Foley had managed to cushion his fall enough to avoid fatal trauma. As medical personnel rushed to the scene, including team physician Dr. Francois Petit, cameras captured the chaotic aftermath. Foley had suffered a badly dislocated shoulder and severe contusions. Due to spatial constraints, standard medical gurneys could not easily reach the scene, requiring the entire cell structure to be lifted with the Undertaker still standing atop it. Common sense dictated that the match was definitively over. Yet, defying all medical reason, Foley slowly stirred, rose to his feet, and began climbing back up the exterior of the cell towards certain peril. Backstage observers watched in sheer disbelief, calling him insane, yet recognizing that this exact moment was cementing his legendary status. What followed next was entirely unplanned. During a planned sequence meant to see a routine chokeslam give way through the weakened mesh, the steel panel suddenly gave way completely. Foley plummeted from the top of the cage straight down into the ring canvas below, with a heavy steel folding chair falling directly behind him and striking him forcefully in the face. The impact knocked Foley out cold for 42 seconds. The first time in his professional career, he suffered a legitimate, total loss of consciousness. Medical staff, including Terry Funk and Dr. Francois Petit, flooded the ring. The Undertaker looked down at his fallen opponent, genuinely fearing for his life. To divert attention, and by precious seconds for medical evaluation, Terry Funk stepped up to the Undertaker and urged him to strike him instead. When Foley finally regained consciousness, his face was a bloody mask. In a bizarre display of characteristic showmanship, as medical staff tended to him, he managed to pull a dislodged tooth out through his nasal passage while offering a defiant smile to the cameras. The grueling 17-minute spectacle ultimately concluded with the Undertaker securing the victory. As medical staff brought out a stretcher, Foley famously waved it off, rising to his feet to absorb the deafening adoration of 16,000 fans. Backstage, the emotional fallout was immediate. Vince McMahon greeted Foley at the curtain, expressing gratitude while firmly demanding a promise that he would never attempt anything of that magnitude again. Colette Foley, watching the carnage unfold while worrying about their young children, experienced a surge of anger and relief once she finally received word that her husband was alive. The physical toll of the match was staggering. 15 stitches underneath the lip, 2 lost teeth, a severely bruised kidney for 6 weeks, a dislocated jaw, and a heavily battered shoulder. Yet, that single night fundamentally transformed public perception of Mick Foley, sparking a massive career renaissance that culminated in capturing the World Wrestling Federation Championship just months later. However, the relentless pursuit of escalating violence set a dangerous precedent. The physical bar continued to rise because standard expectations demanded more. Just 7 months later, Foley pushed his physical limits even further in a brutal I Quit match against The Rock, absorbing 11 unprotected steel chair strikes to the head in a performance that drew widespread retrospective concern regarding long-term brain trauma and chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Despite multiple medical warnings from independent neurologists advising him that continuing to wrestle would leave him permanently crippled, Foley's internal drive to deliver unforgettable moments pushed him forward. Today, retired from active competition, he manages the lingering physical and cognitive consequences of a career built on supreme sacrifice. Reflecting upon the legacy of hell in a cell, Foley and his peers acknowledged that while the risks were astronomical, the resulting emotional connection forged with the audience remains unmatched. It stands as an enduring monument to a performer who willingly traded his physical well-being to achieve immortality in the hearts of wrestling fans worldwide. The darkness falls over the arena, and when you look back at the grand tapestry of professional wrestling, there are moments in time that refuse to fade into the shadows. June 28, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, the world bore witness to something that transcended sports entertainment. It was a collision between two forces of nature, the Undertaker and mankind, inside the terrifying confines of hell in a cell. When you step inside that structure, it hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. The creators knew it was going to be extreme, but nobody could fathom the sheer magnitude of the devastation that was about to unfold. We are talking about two extraordinary talents who consistently pushed the envelope until the very edge gave way. Professional wrestling is theater, it is spectacle, and it is scripted, but as the old saying goes, you can never fake gravity. Nothing in the history of this business struck such absolute fear into the hearts of observers until the events of that night spiraled completely out of control. What left millions of fans around the globe utterly stunned was the unrelenting, unforgiving punishment that Mick Foley endured. Until you witnessed it with your own eyes, human logic dictated that a person could not possibly subject their physical form to such torment and survive to tell the tale. This match was entirely real. The pain etched across the canvas was real. The unfolding drama was palpable. And behind the commentary desk, observers were screaming, cursing, and watching in sheer disbelief. Why would a human being willingly subject themselves to such agony? The legacy of Hell in a Cell persists as both an epic triumph of storytelling and a sobering cautionarità. Looking back, those involved dodged catastrophic bullets that day. Not just one, but several. The chilling reality remains that a competitor was allowed to slip into unconsciousness and then simply continue the battle. The collateral damage that followed is a story of its own, forcing everyone to confront the ultimate question: when does it stop? When is enough truly enough? You pay the price, day after day, for the decisions made during those 15 fleeting minutes in the spotlight. It was a dangerously brilliant masterpiece, but it forces every single one of us to look in the mirror and ask whether it was truly worth it. Every individual who enters the world of professional wrestling is often searching for something they feel is missing in their personal lives. For Mick Foley, a childhood filled with teasing created an overwhelming psychological need to be accepted, to be liked, and eventually to capture that World Wrestling Federation Championship gold. The seeds of this relentless pursuit of a reaction were planted years earlier, long before the bright lights of national television. As a college sophomore, a young Foley drank red food coloring, leaped from a bed onto a stuffed animal resting on a concrete floor, and spat out the fake blood concoction while dorm mates watched, when a voice in the crowd called it the most disgusting thing ever witnessed. A profound realization washed over him. He discovered a strange kind of power. If he could not make people love him, perhaps he could shock them, disgust them, or provoke any reaction necessary to make his presence felt. His name is Mick Foley, known across the globe as the Hardcore Legend, and he is a survivor of Hell in a Cell. For many fans, Hell in a Cell serves as the ultimate gateway into the world of professional wrestling. Countless enthusiasts point to that exact match as their introduction to the industry. Yet, the immediate follow-up question is whether they expected every encounter to mirror that level of carnage. They certainly do not. A typical match featuring the Hardcore Legend was already brutal, characterized by blood, thumbtacks, fire, barbed wire, and even explosions with high explosives in international rings, or taking catastrophic falls straight onto unprotected concrete. The physical toll was staggering. Family members, including his children, watched in awe and trepidation as a husband and father pushed his body through unimaginable limits simply to evoke gasps of shock and horror from the audience. Realism was the ultimate tool in his arsenal. To Foley, A match was not considered successful unless walking back to the hotel room was a struggle. He did not necessarily enjoy the agonizing pain itself. Rather, he reveled in the fact that he could absorb it, sell it, and translate it into a compelling narrative that captivated the masses. For his wife, Colette, who met him over 35 years prior, the man behind the terrifying persona was surprisingly gentle, kind, and armed with corny jokes. Yet, she understood his unwavering commitment. When the adrenaline surged, his singular drive was to leave the audience talking about the magnitude of the show, regardless of the personal risk involved. This relentless drive birthed various personas, most notably Cactus Jack, a wild, unpredictable character who felt entirely unhinged and utterly magnetic. Industry veterans and producers recognized his unmatched grasp of match psychology. He understood precisely how to manipulate crowd emotions, playing into the fans' inherent desire to see someone completely out of control, someone willing to shatter the script and take them on a terrifying, exhilarating ride. Long before reaching the bright lights of the World Wrestling Federation, Foley immersed himself in the study of international combat arts, spending hours analyzing Japanese tapes that emphasize realism, storytelling, and overcoming surrounding hazards. Seeking a place where he could stand out, he traveled abroad and formed a legendary rivalry with Terry Funk, a pioneer in suspension of disbelief and violent death matches. Those explosive, fiery encounters in international rings solidified his reputation for the extreme. At the time, the World Wrestling Federation operated under a much tamer, highly polished banner that did not align with the gritty style Foley had perfected. It took the persistence of fellow competitor and travel companion Al Snow, along with the eventual backing of key backstage personnel like Jim Ross, to convince management to give him an opportunity. Vince McMahon was initially reluctant, perceiving him as unmarketable and unorthodox, yet desperate to find fresh opponents for the unstoppable Undertaker. Management decided to roll the dice on a blank canvas. Thus, Mankind was born, a deranged, masked eccentric pulling his own hair out. A bizarre creation that never would have succeeded with anyone other than Mick Foley, whose absolute commitment breathed life into the character. The foundational rivalry between The Undertaker and Mankind spanned multiple pay-per-views and global arenas. But by 1998, the character dynamic had plateaued, needing a massive spark for the upcoming King of the Revolution event. Company producers turned to a revolutionary concept, Hell in a Cell. Having witnessed the inaugural cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, a monumental milestone in industry history, Foley began brainstorming ways to elevate the danger. During a casual conversation, Terry Funk jokingly suggested starting the match on top of the cage and getting thrown off. What started as dark humor quickly morphed into a terrifying reality. Foley could not shake the thought from his mind. He pitched the idea to management and The Undertaker. While initial hesitation lingered, Foley's unwavering determination won approval, viewing the moment not as a second act, but as a desperate bid to keep his career afloat. On June 28, 1998, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a capacity crowd of 16,000 fans waited with bated breath. The tension backstage was palpable. Referee Jimmy Corderas and producer Gerald Briscoe monitored the monitors as the atmosphere grew, thick with anticipation. Breaking all conventional rules of professional sports entertainment, Mankind did not wait inside the structure. Instead, clad in his signature brown leather mask, he scaled the exterior mesh wall before the bell even rang. Standing nearly 20 feet above the arena floor, the truth, unknown to many at the time, was that Foley was genuinely terrified of heights. As he stood atop the dark, swaying structure while The Undertaker made his entrance, he desperately calculated how to climb down gracefully without ruining his career. He did not have to wait long. As the two heavyweights confronted each other on the mesh roof, the structural integrity began to fail, secured only by temporary plastic zip ties that were never engineered to withstand a combined weight of 600 pounds of human muscle. The mesh suddenly gave way by a foot, sending the improvised fasteners springing into the air. Eyewitnesses backstage knew instantly that disaster was looming. Moments later, near the edge of the cage directly above the Spanish announce desks, the inevitable occurred. In an instant that felt simultaneously like slow motion and the blink of an eye, the Undertaker hurled mankind off the summit. A 300-pound human being plummeted 20 feet through the air, crashing violently through the flimsy wooden table below. The resulting sound was terrifying, echoing through the arena like a catastrophic vehicular collision. Backstage personnel exploded in sheer panic, certain they had just witnessed a tragedy. Millions watching at home gasped in horror. Yet, through incredible spatial awareness and sheer luck, Foley managed to twist slightly in midair, absorbing the impact across the desk and avoiding fatal disaster. Medical personnel, including the versatile Dr. Francois Petit, rushed to the scene. Placed on a rigid stretcher, Foley appeared finished for the evening. The structure was raised to clear the debris, and preparations began to evacuate him from the arena. Then the unthinkable happened. Driven by an insatiable desire to engage the audience and complete his mission, Foley stirred. Ignoring the unified pleas of referees, agents, and medical staff screaming at him to stay down, he began to climb back up to the top of the cage. Backstage, onlookers watched in stunned disbelief, marveling at what many privately categorized as the actions of an absolute madman. Back on top of the cell, a second planned sequence awaited, though fate had far more punishing designs. The original plan called for a standard chokeslam that would gradually give way, allowing the Undertaker to push Foley down. Instead, the steel mesh panels violently fractured entirely under the impact of a chokeslam, sending Foley plummeting straight through the open void of the cage roof all the way down to the hard wooden canvas of the ring below. As he fell, a heavy steel folding chair stationed on top of the structure cascaded downward right behind him, striking him squarely in the face upon impact. The blow knocked him completely unconscious for the first time in his professional career. 42 seconds of absolute blackness where the mind went entirely blank. Pandemonium erupted in the ring. Dr. Francois, Terry Funk, and officials rushed to canvas. Seeing Foley completely unresponsive with his eyes rolled back, a genuinely shaken Undertaker turned to Terry Funk and demanded to know if he was still breathing, to draw immediate attention away from a fallen star. Funk courageously stepped forward and yelled at the Undertaker to strike him, successfully buying crucial seconds for the medical team to tend to the unconscious competitor. When consciousness finally clawed its way back, Foley found himself staring at the shoes of Terry Funk. Realizing he was still expected to finish the battle, true to his theatrical instincts, even as the fog cleared, his mind immediately raced toward visual presentation. Noticing a massive laceration beneath his lip, he deliberately manipulated his tongue through the wound to enhance the gruesome television imagery. Meanwhile, a tooth knocked out by the flying steel chair had miraculously traveled upward through his nasal passage, lodging itself inside his nostril. Despite the severe trauma, suffering a dislocated jaw, a separated shoulder, bruised kidneys, 16 stitches, severe concussions, and lost teeth, the 17-minute ordeal finally reached a conclusion as the Undertaker secured the victory. Refusing the stretcher once more, Foley waved it off, rising to his feet as the arena erupted into absolute hysteria. The crowd recognized the raw, undeniable authenticity of what they had just witnessed, cementing a bond of trust and respect that could never be broken. Backstage, the reception was a mixture of profound relief and stern warnings. Vince McMahon greeted him at the curtain, expressing gratitude, while firmly demanding a promise that he would never attempt anything of that magnitude again, even as medical staff plucked sharp metal thumbtacks out of his battered flesh. Colette Foley, watching the carnage unfold with their young children, experienced a wave of anger and terror, later receiving a phone call where her husband attempted to reassure her amidst the wreckage. That single match fundamentally altered public perception, sparking an unprecedented career renaissance that propelled Mick Foley from an overlooked outsider to the summit of the industry as World Wrestling Federation champion just months later. Yet, the invisible cost of such physical sacrifice was already compounding, driven by an internal pressure to continually elevate the stakes and live up to the moniker of the hardcore legend. Foley pushed forward into another brutal chapter, the infamous I Quit match against The Rock at the Royal Rumble. Despite widespread concern and warnings from peers regarding excessive blood loss and head trauma, he insisted on pressing ahead, enduring a staggering 11 unprotected steel chair strikes ahead while handcuffed. The brutality of the encounter left lasting psychological scars, particularly on his young children watching from the audience, who struggled to separate scripted entertainment from a horrifying reality of witnessing a parent-absorbed traumatic brain injury on live television. As the years pressed on, the accumulation of concussions, each impact comparable to experiencing a 25-mile-per-hour vehicular collision, began to exact a severe toll. Independent neurological evaluations delivered an unambiguous verdict. Further competition would result in permanent physical disability. Though the temptation to lace up his boots one last time lingered, the physical reality forced a definitive retirement from active in-ring competition. Today, the shadow of chronic traumatic encephalopathy and the long-term consequences of repetitive head trauma remain a constant companion. Yet, rather than retreating into fear, Foley channels his enduring energy into spoken word tours, treating public performance as mental gymnastics to keep his mind sharp. Reflecting upon his storied career, the resentment he once harbored toward being defined by a single match has transformed into a profound acceptance. During a visit to a World Wrestling Federation warehouse where he unexpectedly encountered the original steel cell, touching the rusted mesh brought tears to his eyes, a powerful reminder of a life lived entirely on his own terms, leaving behind a legacy that will outlive us all. On June 28, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view, one match would earn its place as one of the most shocking in wrestling history. Undertaker versus Mankind in Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. I knew it was going to be crazy, but I didn't know it was going to be that crazy. She had two talents out there that liked to really push that envelope until it fell over the edge. Oh, wrestling's fake, but you can't fake gravity. I've been frightened by a lot of things in pro wrestling. Nothing frightened me as much as that did, until later on in the match anyway. What left fans stunned was the unrelenting punishment Mick Foley endured. Until you saw it, you didn't believe that a person could physically do this and live. This match was real. The pain was real. The drama was real. I was cursing and screaming and calling him an FING idiot. Why are you doing this? One of wrestling's most infamous matches. Hell in a Cell's legacy persists as both an epic success and a cautionary tale. I think we dodged bullets that day. Not just one, but several. It's really crazy to think that they would allow someone to go unconscious and then just continue. The match, the collateral damage that ensued, is another story. When does it stop? When's enough? You pay all day long for the decisions you make in your 15 minutes in the spotlight. It was a dangerously crazy masterpiece, but all of us need to ask ourselves the question, was it worth it? Everyone who gets into wrestling is looking for something that they find missing in their own lives. For me, I was teased a lot, so I had an overwhelming need to be liked, and to take that World Wrestling Federation championship belt. For example, I remember being in college as a sophomore. I took a swig of red food coloring, and I did a superfly leap off a bed onto a stuffed atom on a concrete floor. And when I hit the floor, I spit that blood concoction out. Everybody in the dorm was there watching. I heard one of the girls yell out, "That's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen." And I felt that power. So I thought, if I can't make people love me, perhaps I can disgust them. I just needed to get reactions. My name is Mick Foley. I am known as a hardcore legend, and I survived Hell in a Cell. I think Hell in a Cell is a perfect gateway. So many people have said that's the first match I was shown, and now I'm a huge fan. And my follow-up question is always like, did you expect all the matches to be like that? It's like, because they're not. A normal Mick Foley match is quite hardcore, brutal, probably blood, thumbtacks, fire. Oh my God, he's ready to take his dick. Barbed wire, getting exploded by C4 explosives in Japan, getting speared through a table of fire, taking like bumps on the concrete. Oh God, right on the concrete. I mean, he just put his body through so much. I'm Mickey Foley, and my dad is a hardcore legend, Mick Foley. I think he just really loves getting like in oh my God or gross or nasty type of pop. Oh my God. I'm Noelle Foley, and I'm the daughter of Mick Foley. Realism was a big tool. I didn't think I was having a good match unless I had trouble getting back to my hotel room. I did not enjoy the pain. I enjoyed the fact that I could take it and sell it in a way that was fun. Oh no. Oh my God. He's hung himself in the rope. I just had to really ask myself, do I want to get mixed up with this? I'm Colette Foley, and I've known Mick Foley for over 35 years. When I met Mick, I noticed his eyes. I noticed that he was a gentle, nice person. But his corny jokes and terrible humor, that's what really made me fall in love with him. Our wedding song was actually Beauty and the Beast. We were a good team. She understood. She understood my commitment. Like, she really did. When that adrenaline was pumping, he just wanted people to leave talking about how great a show it was, at his own risk. And that was his drive to keep going and get more crazy along the way. He developed a personality called Cactus Jack. You can't stop Cactus Jack. He was a wild and crazy guy. You thought he might be insane. Are you kidding me? He had charisma. You couldn't take your eyes off this guy. He was different. He was unusual. I'm Jim Cornette, and at the time of the Hell in a Cell match, I was working as an agent and a producer for the World Wrestling Federation. Mick was excellent with psychology in his matches. He knew that the fans liked people that were out of control. He's biting them. Someone who was going against the script. Cactus is going down. He could take those people on that ride with him and elicit the response that he wanted to get. This man's out of line for this. Then the attention would be on him, and his reputation would grow. Our bedroom furniture consisted of a mattress on the floor with a black and white television, with a VCR that barely worked, and in that VCR was Japanese wrestling tapes. I would sometimes watch 12 hours of Japanese wrestling a day. I liked the realism, the storytelling. It's not just man versus man. You have to defeat the surroundings, you know? I thought Japan was likely to be where I made my living. They were looking for a foreigner who could feud with Terry Funk. Terry Funk was the greatest of all time for his ability to make people suspend disbelief in A. Second, Terry Funk became somewhat of a mentor to Mick, and they started working together in these explosive, bloody, violent, fiery death matches in Japan. I was always drawn to the wild stuff, so I would literally be on my hands and knees. And I thought that was proof that I had done something special. This is a place I can make myself stand out. So I never saw myself being a World Wrestling Entertainment guy. In the World Wrestling Federation at the time, it wasn't a PG era. It was a G-rated era. Very bland. And for someone like Mick, his style didn't really gel with what the World Wrestling Federation was selling. My name is Al Snow. I'm a former World Wrestling Entertainment superstar. I was Mick Foley's travel partner. And, dare I say, probably his best friend. Probably his only friend. I'm just kidding. Vince McMahon did not want Mick Foley. Didn't think that he was marketable. Didn't think he was attractive. How I convinced McMahon to hire Mick was to give me a chance on my observations of talent. Because I see something in this guy. I'm Jim Ross, and at the time of the Hell in a Cell, I was Vice President of Talent Relations. I needed to make sure that we had dancing partners for the top guys. Undertaker was one of the biggest stars in the history of wrestling. Long live The Undertaker. Vince kept trying to go with giants to face The Undertaker, which was boring and dull. Big right hand. What you needed was a lunatic. I'd heard a story about Vince slamming his hand down on a table and said, all right, I'll bring him in, but I'm covering up his face. We don't know who he is. We don't know nothing about him. Well, he's nobody. He's nothing. That's Vince's perception of Mick Foley. Hey, everybody, I'm Gerald Briscoe, better known as Jerry Briscoe, World Wrestling Entertainment Hall of Famer and Chickasaw Nation Hall of Famer. Vince was like, man, it was like, okay, now you guys go build a character around nothing. So we come down to Mankind. What the hell is Mankind? Here it comes, Mankind. This bogus bullshit wouldn't have worked with anybody but Mick Foley. He's pulling his own hair out. Without a connection to the audience. Without character. Everything else is meaningless. I think fans can sense the commitment. My goal for Mick was that he was going to be a great opponent for The Undertaker. He was willing to try anything. My granny would say, he didn't turn nothing down but the covers. So now I've got this big challenge to not let him kill himself. The Undertaker and I were laying quite a foundation. 7 pay-per-view matches, 10 television matches. We've been around the globe together. But my character had kind of plateaued. I knew I had to do something. Something that would add to instead of detract from our legacy. For 1998's King of the Ring pay-per-view, World Wrestling Federation producers plan to reignite the Mankind Undertaker feud with a recently developed concept, Hell in a Cell. The way that they did cage matches in the World Wrestling Federation was you had to either get out by either climbing over cage or leaving through the door. I asked Vince McMahon, I said, what about if this cage match is different? What about if we put a roof on the cage? Both go in, only one's coming out. And that's where we came up with Hell in a Cell. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels had the first Hell in a Cell, and it was a mile marker. Well, the Michaels-Undertaker match, technically, to me, it's still the best one. I just looked at this match open-jawed. I literally can't do any of the things that these guys are doing. Some 9 months later, they're going to do it again, this time The Undertaker and Mankind. And then I asked Terry Funk, what are we going to do? And he started laughing. He went, you know what would be funny is, what if you actually started the match on top of the cell? And what if you're thrown off? He's saying it as a joke. He stopped laughing. I looked at him and I said, I think I can do that. I could not get the idea out of my head. I pitched The Undertaker and Mr. McMahon, the idea being thrown off, into a casual conversation. It was a great cell job. I wasn't on board, really, for throwing Mick off the cell. And, he was dead set. And then, we got Betts on board with him. I was like, okay, I was not looking at this match as like a second act of my career. I was just looking at it as a way to try to keep my head above water. I thought, when this run is done, I am too. Did you know going into this, what Mick had planned? Yes, he told me the high spots, that he was going to be all right. If he can see it, he can do it. And I trust that. We have only seen one Hell in a cell matchup in World Wrestling Federation history. And it was the most unbelievable match that I think I've ever witnessed. Jar, I remember specifically thinking to myself, I need to come out with everything I've got. Just eyes on the prize. This match has so much riding on it, JR, that the loser may not even stop at the hospital. They may go straight to the morgue. There's that old saying, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Ladies and gentlemen, the following contest is the Hell in the Cell match. On June 28, 1998, at Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a packed house eagerly awaits the Hell in a Cell showdown between Undertaker and Mankind. Yeah, you gotta imagine the pressure that Mick's probably feeling as he's walking to the ring. Knowing that the last time an audience saw this match, it was Shawn and Taker. Knowing that he's got to outdo that. Poor Mick. He's not exactly the most nimble guy in the world either. My name is Jimmy Corderas. At the time of Hell in a Cell, I was part of the ring crew and also a referee. I was backstage watching on the monitors, and Gerald Briscoe was the one who produces there. I had the best seat in the house, sat right in front of about 10 monitors watching everything. So you were like basically sitting in the captain's seat during Hell in a Cell? I was the pilot. Baby, this is probably the first time in 20 years that I've watched this match. No one knew what to anticipate. And I don't think anyone could have ever imagined what they were going to see. Hello again, everybody. I'm Jim Ross alongside Jerry the King Lawler. I was as much in the dark as a fan watching at home. I did want to start the match in a way nobody had ever started a match before, and to do something no one had ever done. I think there's a little bit of shock on everybody's face, like, he's going up now? He's going up at the beginning of the match? He's supposed to start out inside the cage, isn't he? What next? He's not very logical. I mean, he needs therapy. I had not been on top of the cell. I assured Mr. McMahon of The Undertaker, yeah, I've been up there. It's fine. But the truth is, when I got up there, I was terrified. I'm actually not good with heights. Whoa, it's totally dark in here. He may fall off that cell. The entire time The Undertaker's music is playing, I'm thinking to myself, how can I gracefully climb down this cell without ruining my career? Wait a minute. Do you think he's daring The Undertaker to start this match up there? I thought it was a hell of a way to start. The Hell in a Cell match is officially underway. It created a fear of the mind that one could not get past. Something's going to happen. What's going to happen? They had attached the top section of the cage with zip ties. But there's 600 pounds of human beings up there. The Undertaker and I both take a step, and that mesh goes down by about a foot. Oh my gosh, look at this, it broke through, and I literally hear zip ties springing. They're destroying the Hell in a Cell. When those zip ties were popping off, I thought, oh boy, this is not good. I attempt to suplex the Undertaker on top of that mesh. He cut that off knowing that, there was a decent chance we were both going to go through it. They're throwing punches, and they got toward the edge of the cage where the announce tables were. I thought when they got close to the edge, there's just no way in hell that Mick is going to take a tumble off the top of the cage. That's too dangerous. That's too iffy. There's very little margin for error. I look at this incredibly small table like a little dollhouse. I don't know how in the world it's going to work out, and I don't like it a damn bit. And lo and behold, the closer they got to the edge of the cage, the more I became convinced that something big was going to happen here momentarily. And it did. Then all of a sudden, here's Jim Ross, and here's Jerry Lawler, as well as the Spanish announcers, and they're looking up, and a 300-pound human being is flung at them from almost 20 feet above them, and he's coming at them fast. As strange as it sounds, it felt like it was going by in slow motion. It also went by in the blink of an eye. All of a sudden you hear this. God, this crash. Holy shit, did we just see what we thought we saw? The sound of Mick going through the announcer table was scary as hell. Everyone that was in the back, we just exploded in concern. It was like witnessing a car accident. Who you will thought he was dead. This man just stopped dead in his tracks. In a business filled with crazy, strange things, nobody had ever tried to do something like this before. It blew everybody's mind, and I thought, my God, this is over. There's no way he's going to get back up. There was an audible gasp where everyone went no. We had 2 young children at the time, and they didn't know what to think of it. All I kept saying was, oh, it's fake, just to soothe them. Yet in the back of my mind, I'm freaking out. It's tough to know when it really, really, really is real. But it had to have hurt him, and it was believable. If the Undertaker threw him just a little too far, or a little too short, that's falling from God. Knows how high onto concrete, or could have even landed on fans. The pain would come later. I'm kind of flying high on adrenaline, and I pulled off this pretty lofty goal. Going through the table could not have gone better. He saw in his head, and in mid-air, he turned in such a way that he was able to land flat on that. Announced death to cushion that fall, and not kill him. And when it did happen, you should have heard the voices back there. Replay that, and you go into business mode where you're trying to get every great shot that you had. With it, Hugo Savanovic, the Spanish commentator, bailed out his chair instead of getting flattened. It was pretty traumatic, to be honest, because it was my friend out there and being torn with the rule that you don't step in, you don't interfere with whatever Mick was trying to construct. The fans were literally having this guy laying at their feet, and they're looking at all the attendants, and the referees. I know Terry Funk was the first one to get there. I asked Terry, is he conscious right there? Now we're trying to make room for Dr. Francois to get there. So I was in my medical room, and suddenly I hear right now, come right now, Mick fell from the top of the cell. And I said, what? I am Dr. Francois Petit. I used to be the doctor for the World Wrestling Federation for about 5 years on the road, and before that for about 9 years in Los Angeles. Francois was kind of like the French Army knife. Francois was a black belt in karate. He was a Sub-Zero in the first Mortal Kombat movie, probably a secret agent, and an investment banker. Francois was what I think they called them bone crackers. He could fix you. You probably wouldn't enjoy it, but he could put you back in place. No matter what the malady was, baby, I fix you. I fix you, baby, it'll be okay. You're gonna have to put it back. Of course. He was my number one patient. I can't say something like that. Well, this is nuts what he did. He fell on his back badly, and on top of that, on his dislocated shoulder. The emergency medical technicians have no idea how to get the gurney down there, and it turns out the gurney wouldn't fit. So now they got to raise the cell with the Undertaker on it. He was put on that gurney like that was real. They were going to take him to the hospital. We thought the damn thing was over with. I mean, what else can they do, but we found out. I realize that the longer I'm on there, the more fully the audience is engaged. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Well, I'm not, but I've got a feeling that I'm going to be able to continue. Everybody was trying to tell him, no, Mick, you're done. Stop. What are you doing? Where are you going? Why are you doing this? Just stay down. Holy shit, he's coming back for more. I'm thinking this guy will be the craziest, dumbest son of a bitch in our business. How can he climb? How can his body at this point? I do not know how I'm going to do this and live. But I have pledged to do it, and I'm going to do it. This is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing here. I'm thinking to myself, you're insane, you're an idiot. But at the same time that I'm thinking that was the moment that really made him a star. By then, backstage was packed because they know shit's going on. I stayed back where I was because I knew something else was going to happen. I knew. I guess at the end of the day, I'm glad that they went back up because it created another moment. It added to the storyline because sometimes you can storyline yourself right to the hospital. The next spot in the storyline pitched by Mick Foley was far less concerning, at least at first. We had already agreed on the one choke slam, which we thought would cause the match to gradually give way. And the big visual was going to be Undertaker, like stuffing me down. But that did not happen. And now, Houston, we got a problem. I thought that the destruction of the Foley body was well in hand. And that's enough. It was a completely different situation than when he got thrown off the top. You just know, I'm screaming at the television set. I am cursing. I was like trying to get the company on the phone. And I couldn't get through to anybody. How do you tell your children, oh, daddy's acting? Laying there lifeless, motionless. This was not expected at all. I thought that was the end of him when he hit that solid mat. That ring is a concrete. The mat doesn't do it justice. It's more like hitting the cement. As he's falling, that metal-heavy, solid folding chair came right behind him. You could see when he lands that chair. Boom, there's a chair on his face. Boom. He could have very easily died. My mom thought he was dead also. I was shocked. I was screaming. I was furious. Because I thought he betrayed me by not telling me the truth that there was another spot. There we go. Choke slam. Oh, that was the first time in his career that he'd been legitimately knocked out cold. We all flooded the cage. Dr. Francois, Terry Funk, the guys that went out, they were thinking this might be the end. He was really not responsive at that point. I turn around and look at the Undertaker, and I say, okay, that's enough, because I saw his eyes not answering. Man, he landed in such a funky way. I didn't know that he was going to get up. I was legit scared for what the results were going to be. The Undertaker, he looked at Terry and said, see if he's alive. Terry reports back, he's still breathing. There were so many times when I'd seen stars, but I'd never been out for more than a couple seconds. And this time there's 42 seconds that I don't recall. Terry Funk took it into his own hands and walked up to Undertaker and said, "Hit me," so he could take the focus away from Mick a little bit, so everybody could tend to him. It's all ad-lib. It's all at the moment. If I'd ever seen a match that should have been stopped, that was probably the one. But he just didn't do it back then. We didn't stop matches, we bought time. And I needed every second that I could get. When I came to what I immediately saw, Terry Funk's shoes, I then realized I'm in this match, and that's where I try to stand. How is he still standing up? I don't have a damn clue. Oh my God, he is a freaking mess. It's really crazy to think that they would allow this to happen. Just like someone go unconscious, and then continue to match. As the clouds began to clear, I was all about trying to create an image for television. I've got a massive wound underneath my lip. And if I can find a way to take my tongue, stick it through that massive wound, it's going to make for a great television moment. And he's smiling. There's the tooth. How do you get hit in the face with a chair, and it knocks your tooth out, and it ends up in your nostril? One of the doctors said that it went into his throat, but because he was breathing so heavily that he had sucked it up the other way and came down through his nasal passage. Maybe a tooth? This match was real. The pain was real. The drama was real. The expressions on everybody's face were real. Real concern. You could look in his eyes and tell you there was nobody home. And I'm trying to talk to him. All he wanted to do is, "We got to get you a tax." What is that? A car tax? This was their first appearance in World Wrestling Entertainment. I felt like I should be the guy to bring him over. He's purposely rolling around to make sure he gets all the thumbtacks on him as much as possible. When the adrenaline is taking over, you don't realize the pain anymore. You're part of the pain. You're pushing so far, you don't even know you're doing it. Mick is very big about come hell or high water. Whatever it is, he will see it through. Finally, the 17-minute match comes to an end with The Undertaker defeating Mankind. What a spectacle it was. In that Pittsburgh Civic Arena, 16,000 people. We've never seen anything like this before. They brought the stretcher out because we thought it was needed for sure. But he waved it off and that crowd went absolutely insane. This was real as a heart attack. And the people could tell that puts the fans in the corner of this guy who just cannot be stopped. And that's the kind of shit that gets over. An audience has invested their time, their money, and their effort in one single thing. And that is the belief in you. He knew and understood that risking his well-being allows them to more thoroughly believe in him and the experience. Thank God this is over. We kept taking these chances, and another chance, and another chance. And for why? As long as I live, I will never forget what we just witnessed right there. He would always call and check in with me, let me know that he's okay. And now here comes the one pay-per-view where she really needs to know, and there's no phone call. I had to wait and wait and wait. It made me worry, and that anger came back. And a few hours later, Mick calls me. She was screaming at me, "Your children thought you were dead." I think prior to the cell, she prepared by trusting that I wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize the family. After that, it became a big concern. Mick came back through the curtain. I mean, everybody rushed up and wanted to check on him and make sure he was as okay as he could possibly be. One of the first people to greet Mick at the curtain was Vince McMahon. He said, "Mick, I want to thank you for what you've done for my company. And I want you to promise me that you will never do anything like it again and pull those thumbtacks out of him." I'm going backstage, and I overheard Mick say to Taker, "Did we do the thumbtack spot?" He doesn't realize that the doctor is just plucking them out of him right now. When you love somebody and you respect them as much as I did Mick, my first thought was, are you okay? Are you really okay? I don't think he truly anticipated how severe that was going to be. Like that night, I had to help him get undressed and into bed. You know, he was messed up on that one. I think it was 15 stitches underneath the lip, lost these 2 teeth. I don't even know if I was treated for a concussion. I had a bruised kidney for about 6 weeks. My jaw was dislocated. I can't remember which shoulder was dislocated, but you know what? That match changed the way people felt about me, and that's what really sparked the career. Renaissance. With what you did at Hell in a Cell, I want to publicly thank you. Going from Vince not wanting to see him in a World Wrestling Federation ring to 6 months after that match, he was world champion. The reaction, the pop, the adrenaline, the rush, the more he did, the more risks he took, it made me worry the bar kept just going up because it was never good enough. I think he felt like he had to live up to being the hardcore legend, continuing things that he probably shouldn't have. Mick, at that point, was about what are the limits of physical human endurance. He felt like he owed it to the guy he was working with. He owed it to the people to do something that they hadn't seen before. I remember not a scolding, but a warning. If you continue to try to do these type things, it's going to catch up with you. He understood, but he didn't agree with me. Just 7 months later, Mick Foley again pushes his limits. This time in a brutal showdown with The Rock in the infamous I Quit match. No stopping the match for excessive blood loss. I told Mick that's a horrible idea, but he was going to do what he needed to do and what he wanted to do. He's riding the big tidal waves. I also think it had something to do with my way of making it seem like everything was going to be all right. It was one of the worst days of my life. The I Quit match is underway. I had both children with me. It was super brutal from the beginning. I got carried away with The Rock. I had told him, laid in, Mick Foley is barely moving, and now The Rock has handcuffs. What the hell is he going to do now? He did, but instead of taking 5 shots, I took 11 shots. No, what the hell is Mick Foley doing? His kids were not old enough at that point to really ascertain what was fact and what was fiction. But also in the middle of this fiction, it was a fact. He got brain damage for a wrestling angle on television. Where does it end? What does it take now to put you down? Please, Mick, say I quit. So this sounds pretty bizarre, but I don't have one singular memory of my dad ever wrestling. Part of me thinks it's because it was very traumatic to me. Like, how could these 11 shots change my dad's health? Like, if you were to get 11 headshots, a normal person probably could have died. It's sickening, honestly. I really, really hate the I Quit match. Mick always wanted to over-deliver. And somewhere down the road, all of us need to ask ourselves the question, was it worth it? No. I understood that the style I chose was going to result in great discomfort. There were so many times where I could have made a move less painful, but I chose not to because I thought it would look better. No, there were a handful of doctors saying that you need to stop now. If you continue wrestling, you'll wind up crippled. Do you think that stopped him? I still thought I had one good match left in me, and so I set about trying to delay the inevitable. There were times when he should not have been wrestling. He shouldn't have been cleared. He'd drive around and not remember where he lived. Concussion on top of concussion on top of concussion. My appointment with the World Wrestling Entertainment neurologist had not gone particularly well, so I booked an appointment independent of World Wrestling Entertainment. I'll never forget what he told me. He said, Mr. Foley, if you want to try to find another neurologist to clear you, that's up to you. But I'm telling you, you should never wrestle again. If you push those physical limits like Mick has, you're definitely going to pay a price. Sadly, Mick is paying that price right now. Back then, we didn't know the long-term effects of concussions. When guys take a bump, they have an impact in the ring, similar to experiencing a 25-mile-per-hour car accident. I can only imagine the type of pain that Mick has to live with. He's paid the price for all this fame. Mick is very special, and he's lucky he's still with us. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a very scary disease that is a long-term effect of repetitive concussions and brain trauma. We don't really know how my dad will be doing in 10, 20 years or so. If you're wondering if I'm worried about that, yeah, really worried. Every day, I worry about that. The fallout from what I'd done, I don't see a way out of it. That's one of the most respected and beloved men to ever compete in our business. But I'm going to fight it. I'm going to try to be someone who continues to get sharper as they get older. And so I have these spoken word shows. It's like mental gymnastics for my mind. And I hear the crowd chanting Undertaker. Putting on a show, having that stimulation from people, that keeps him going. I could either appreciate what I have, or I could live in complete fear about the unknown. So I'm going to continue to enjoy myself. He lived his dream. He made his dream. He needs to feel accepted, especially around his legacy. I tell him, go, do the things you like to do, but don't push your luck. Colette knew that I was kind of my own worst enemy when I was in the ring. We dress up in wild costumes and engage in a fantasy form of combat that leaves a lot of us in worse condition than we arrived at, and we do it to earn the acceptance of total strangers. For me, it was all about the reactions, the eyes lighting up, my desire to be authentic. I definitely wanted to be loved. All the sacrifices you put your physique through just for the roar of them. I like that roar. You can't say that's a fault without also admitting that it's responsible for my success. Mick Foley is known for many things. He's a multiple-time champion. He's donated time and energy to charities. But what he's known for is Hell in a Cell. For years, I really harbored some resentment for that match because it was the only thing that I was known for. I was in a dark place for a while. On one hand, I knew I'd done a lot in wrestling. On the other hand, I felt like I'd accomplished nothing at all. The Undertaker and I, we were reminiscing, and he says, "You know, Jack, what we did that night will outlive us both." That was a major step in embracing that moment. That's what I got out of wrestling for, to try to create moments like that. I think fans are going to remember him as a guy who gave his heart and soul to this business and appreciate him immensely for it. The audience is coming to be in awe because few people in the world can put you in awe. And those people do. This is the beauty of it. Me and my dad, we were at the World Wrestling Entertainment Warehouse, and we came across the cell. My dad certainly wasn't expecting to see it. He touched it, and he just started tearing up and started crying. I've never seen my dad cry. For something to make him cry must have been really important and life-changing and also probably pretty scary. Like, this could have been it. I'm lucky I'm here after that. There's no reward big enough to cover that risk. We did not know nearly as much about head injuries as we do now, but I can't tell you with certainty that I would have done things different if I had known that. I felt like the world had offered me this canvas to create surreal, sublime performance art. There were some bumps in the road, but it was a pretty magical way to make a living. On certain nights when things were really good, it was one of the most powerful feelings in the world. On June 28th, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, a single match carved its name in stone as one of the most astonishing spectacles in the history of professional wrestling. The Undertaker versus Mankind, inside the Hell in a Cell structure. Welcome to the dark side of the canvas, where legends are forged and bodies are broken. I am your guide to the shadows of an industry that demands everything and gives back only what you survive. Hell in a Cell hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. Industry insiders knew those two performers liked to push the envelope until it fell right over the edge. But nobody could fathom the sheer magnitude of the descent. Pro wrestling is theater, but you cannot fake gravity. Veteran minds in the business admit that nothing had ever frightened them quite like the sight of that first fall. And worse was yet to come. What left fans around the globe paralyzed was the unrelenting punishment McFoley endured, until you witnessed it with your own eyes. Human logic dictated that a person could not physically survive such destruction and draw breath. But the pain was real. The drama was piercing. Behind the curtains, colleagues were cursing, screaming, and labeling the desperate icon an absolute idiot, shouting into the void, "Why are you doing this?" That match remains an infamous dual legacy. It stands as both an epic, career-defining success and a terrifying cautionary tale. Observers note that everyone involved dodged multiple catastrophic bullets that day. The collateral damage that ensued from allowing a concussed, semi-conscious performer to continue a brutal athletic exhibition is a haunting chapter on its own. When does the madness stop? When is enough truly enough? You pay every single day of your life for the decisions made during 15 short minutes in the blinding spotlight. It was a dangerously chaotic masterpiece, forcing everyone watching to confront a heavy question. Was it worth it? To understand a man known as a hardcore legend, one must analyze the psychological blueprint. Everyone who enters the squared circle is often searching for something missing in their personal lives. For Mick Foley, a childhood marked by teasing created an overwhelming, burning need to be liked, paired with an obsessive ambition to capture the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. In college, a young Foley engaged in early performance art experiments, filling his mouth with red food coloring and executing a flying leap off a dormitory bed onto a stuffed animal on a concrete floor, spitting out the artificial concoction upon impact. When dorm mates reacted with horror and disgust, he tasted power. If he could not make people love him, perhaps he could shock and disgust them. He simply needed a reaction. Mick Foley carved a brutal path through the global landscape of professional wrestling. A standard match for him involved thumbtacks, fire, barbed wire, and extreme impacts that defied self-preservation. Family members, including his wife Colette and his children, watched in a state of perpetual anxiety. Colette, who met Mick over 35 years prior, recognized the gentle, kind soul behind the cornball humor, yet understood the relentless drive that pushed him toward ever-increasing danger. Long before the global stage, Foley developed a wild persona named Cactus Jack. Industry veterans like Jim Cornette, who served as an agent and producer for the World Wrestling Federation during the Hell in a Cell era, recognized Foley's genius for ring psychology. Cactus Jack understood that fans gravitated toward individuals who appeared completely out of control, tearing up the script to take the audience on a terrifying, unpredictable ride. Foley spent hours consuming Japanese wrestling tapes, studying the realism and the concept of man versus environment. Seeking a place where his extreme style belonged, he traveled to Japan, stepping into explosive, bloody, and fiery death matches alongside legendary figures like Terry Funk, who became a crucial mentor. Foley believed that such extreme environments were the only places where he could truly stand out. At the time, the World Wrestling Federation was operating in a mild, family-friendly era. Key decision-makers, including Vince McMahon, initially viewed Mick Foley as unmarketable, lacking conventional attractiveness, and entirely unsuited for the corporate image. However, advocates within the company fought for his inclusion. Jim Ross, serving as Vice President of Talent Relations, recognized the urgent need for a credible, unpredictable opponent to challenge one of the company's cornerstone icons, The Undertaker. Vince McMahon reluctantly agreed to bring Foley in under a masked, obscured identity, leading to the creation of Mankind, a bizarre, hair-pulling, self-mutilating character that should have failed by every traditional metric. Yet, Foley's absolute commitment breathed life into the fiction, establishing a foundational feud with The Undertaker across multiple arenas worldwide. By the summer of 1998, looking to revitalize a character that had plateaued, Foley sought a concept that would cement their legacy. During a casual conversation with Terry Funk, a joke was tossed around about starting a match on top of the cage and being thrown off. What started as dark humor quickly transformed into a grim reality. Foley pitched the idea to The Undertaker and Vince McMahon. While initial hesitation lingered, Foley's unwavering determination won approval. He did not view the match as a second act. He simply viewed it as a desperate way to keep his head above water in a demanding industry. On June 26, 1998, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, 16,000 fans packed the venue. As Mankind made his entrance, the tension in the arena was palpable. Breaking all established protocol, Foley bypassed the inside of the cage entirely, scaling the exterior mesh to begin the match on the roof. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler watched in stunned disbelief from the commentary desk. On top of the structure, amidst total darkness and genuine fear heights, Foley and the Undertaker squared off, the mesh top, secured only by makeshift zip ties, sagged heavily under the combined weight of two large men, snapping ties with audible cracks. Then the unthinkable happened. The Undertaker hurled Mankind off the top of the cage from a height of nearly 20 feet. The 30-pound human body plummeted through the air, crashing directly onto the Spanish announce table below. The impact sounded like a horrific car crash. The arena fell into an instantaneous, stunned gasp, followed by widespread panic backstage. Colleagues and medical personnel rushed to the scene, genuinely fearing the worst. Hugo Savinovic, the Spanish commentator, narrowly avoided disaster by bailing out of his chair seconds prior, miraculously, through sheer adrenaline and a last-second mid-air adjustment that allowed him to absorb some of the shock across the desk. Foley survived the fall. Yet, the nightmare was far from over. Medical staff and emergency personnel rushed to the ringside, attempting to evacuate him on a stretcher. But as the gurney proved unusable due to the surrounding structure, Foley refused to stay down. Driven by an unrelenting desire to maximize the audience engagement and fulfill his internal code, he staggered back to his feet, climbed the cage a second time, and re-entered the physical torment. What followed compounded the horror. During a planned sequence, a choke slam spot went awry when the weakened mesh panel suddenly gave way, sending Foley crashing from the top of the cell all the way down into the center of the ring. As he fell, a heavy steel folding chair dropped alongside him, striking him directly in the face. The impact knocked Foley out cold for over 40 seconds. The first time in his career, he suffered a legitimate, total blackout. Terry Funk, displaying veteran presence, stepped into the fray to divert attention and check for vital signs, shouting to see if his friend was still breathing. When consciousness slowly returned, Foley presented a gruesome visual spectacle. A massive wound beneath his lip exposed a dislodged tooth that had traveled through his nasal passage, resting inside his nose. Bloodied, concussed, and battered, he insisted on continuing. In a surreal display of psychological dedication, he even rolled purposefully in position to ensure thumbtacks scattered across the canvas embedded themselves into its battered flesh. After 17 grueling minutes, the match concluded with The Undertaker securing the victory. Rather than accepting a stretcher, Foley waved it away, standing tall to an adoring, roaring crowd that recognized the authenticity of the sacrifice. Backstage, the emotional fallout was swift. Vince McMahon met Foley at the curtain, expressing gratitude while firmly demanding a promise that he would never attempt such a stunt again, even as medical staff plucked thumbtacks from his skin. Colette Foley, watching the carnage unfold with their young children, experienced a wave of pure anger and terror, later confronting her husband over the severe emotional distress caused to the family. The physical toll was staggering. 15 stitches beneath the lip, 2 lost teeth, a dislocated jaw, a bruised kidney lasting 6 weeks, severe concussions and dislocated joints. Yet, that single match catalyzed a massive career renaissance, transforming public perception and launching Foley to the World Wrestling Federation Championship just months later. Unfortunately, the physical debt collectors always come calling, driven by an internal compulsion to always overdeliver and live up to the moniker of the hardcore legend. Foley continued taking punishing risks. Just 7 months later, in a brutal I Quit match against The Rock, Foley endured 11 unprotected steel chair shots to the head, pushing human endurance past its breaking point and inflicting cumulative, irreversible trauma on his brain. Medical warnings grew increasingly dire. Independent neurologists informed Foley that continuing his career would lead directly to permanent disability or worse. Despite clear signs of cognitive decline, such as driving and forgetting his home address, Foley continued to wrestle, believing he always had one good match left. Today, the long-term consequences of repetitive concussions and traumatic brain injury cast a heavy shadow. Modern medical science recognizes the severe dangers of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a reality that weighs heavily on Foley and his family. Daughters Noelle and Mickey navigate a daily landscape of worry regarding their father's future health. Watching a man who gave every ounce of his physical and mental vitality to entertain strangers, to combat the cognitive toll, and maintain mental stimulation, Foley engages in spoken word tours, treating public performance as mental gymnastics. While he acknowledges the heavy price paid for fame, he reflects on his career not merely with regret, but with a complex mix of pride and humility, revisiting the relics of his past, including an emotional encounter with the very hell in a cell structure stored in a corporate warehouse, brings tears to a man who rarely wept. The realization that those terrifying moments will outlive both performers provides a profound sense of closure. Mick Foley offered his heart, soul, and physical well-being to professional wrestling, creating surreal, sublime performance art on a dangerous canvas. Whether the ultimate price was worth the temporary roar of the crowd remains an open question, one left echoing in the quiet spaces of a legend's remarkable, haunting legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome inside the arena where the lights are blinding, the roar of the crowd is deafening, and the shadows of professional wrestling hold secrets that most would never dare to uncover. I am your guide to the darkness, taking you deep behind the curtain into the blood, the sweat, and the absolute madness that defined an era. Tonight, we turn the pages back to a night that shook the foundations of sports entertainment to its very core. On June 28, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, one match etched its name in stone as the most shocking spectacle in the history of the industry. The Undertaker versus Mankind inside Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell hits your consciousness like a sledgehammer. Everyone knew it was going to be intense, but nobody, absolutely nobody, anticipated that level of sheer brutality. You had two absolute warriors out there willing to push the envelope until it tipped right over the precipice. Wrestling may have its scripted elements, but gravity is one opponent you can never fake. Throughout decades in this business, many things commanded respect and fear, but nothing matched the sheer terror of what unfolded inside that structure. And the night was only just beginning. What left millions of fans around the globe utterly stunned was the unrelenting, bone-chilling punishment endured by Mick Foley. Until you witnessed it with your own eyes, human reason told you that a person could not possibly survive such physical devastation and live to tell the tale. This match was real. The pain was real. The raw, unfiltered drama was real. Behind the scenes, veterans and producers were screaming, cursing, calling him out of his name, asking the ultimate question, why on earth are you doing this? One of the most infamous encounters in professional wrestling history. Hell in a Cell remains both an epic triumph of theatrical resilience and a stark, cautionarità. As many insiders reflected later, the industry dodged multiple catastrophic bullets that day. Not just one, but several. Looking back, it defies all logic that officials would allow a performer to lose consciousness and then simply continue the match. The collateral damage that followed is an entirely different story. When does it finally stop? When is enough truly enough? You pay the price, day in and day out, for the decisions made during those 15 minutes in the intense spotlight. It was a dangerously deranged masterpiece. But every single person involved has to ask the eternal question, was it worth it? To understand a man known as Mick Foley, you have to understand the void he was trying to fill. Everyone who enters this punishing business is looking for something missing in their own lives. For Mick, growing up teased and overlooked, there was an overwhelming, burning need to be liked, to be accepted, and ultimately to capture that World Wrestling Federation Championship gold. Memory takes us back to his college days as a sophomore. He once took a swig of red food coloring, performed a death-defying leap off a bed onto a stuffed atom resting on a concrete floor, and spat out that concoction to simulate blood as the dorm watched in shock. Hearing a girl yell that it was the most disgusting thing she had ever seen gave him a strange, intoxicating power. He realized then that if he could not always make people love him, perhaps he could shock them, disgust them, and make them react. His name is Mick Foley. The world knows him as a hardcore legend, and he is a man who survived Hell in a Cell. For many fans, Hell in a Cell serves as the ultimate gateway. Countless enthusiasts point to that exact match as their introduction to professional wrestling. Yet, the follow-up question is always whether they expected every match to be like that, because the truth is, they certainly are not. A standard Mick Foley match was already a brutal excursion into hardcore territory, featuring blood, thumbtacks, fire, and barbed wire. In Japan, he felt the concussive force of actual explosives, took devastating spears through flaming tables, and absorbed unprotected impacts directly onto concrete floors. His daughter, Noelle Foley, recounts growing up watching her father put his body through unimaginable strain just to elicit a gasp of absolute horror or disbelief from the audience. Realism was his primary tool. Mick often admitted that he did not feel like he had a good match unless he had trouble even walking. Back to his hotel room afterward. He did not necessarily enjoy the pain itself, but he loved his uncanny ability to absorb it and sell the drama in a way that captivated the world. Standing by his side through more than 35 years of marriage, Colette Foley saw the gentle, kind human being beneath the chaotic exterior. Drawn to his terrible humor and corny jokes, she became his teammate, understanding the fierce commitment that drove him. When that adrenaline started pumping, Mick simply wanted people to leave the arena talking about an unforgettable show, regardless of the personal cost. That relentless drive birthed various incarnations, most notably Cactus Jack. You simply could not stop Cactus Jack. He was wild, unpredictable, and possessed a raw charisma that kept all eyes glued to him. Jim Cornette, working at the time as a producer and agent for the World Wrestling Federation, noted that Mick possessed an elite understanding of match psychology. He knew the fans loved someone who felt entirely out of control. Someone breaking free from the script, taking the audience on a wild, dangerous ride to elicit the exact reaction he desired. Long before reaching the bright lights of national television, Mick's education was forged in the underground tape trading culture. His apartment featured little more than a mattress on the floor and a worn television playing Japanese wrestling tapes for up to 12 hours a day. He gravitated toward the realism, the storytelling, and the concept of man battling not just an opponent, but overcoming his harsh surroundings. Japan became his proving ground, and it was there that he crossed paths with Terry Funk, one of the greatest of all time when it came to making audiences suspend disbelief. Funk became a mentor, and together they embarked on a series of violent, bloody, fiery death matches. Mick was drawn to the most extreme elements, viewing those scars and bruises as undeniable proof that he had carved out a unique space for himself.